All right, now I want to move on to the secondary topic of what we're doing, and specifically why we're kind of in this and what I see going forward. Now, I would say I have a pretty unique perspective coming to this conversation. When we're talking about intergenerational differences, so we just talked about culture. Now, what I want to talk about is the economic and income growth, as well as societal growth of the younger generations and how that intergenerational relationship happened. Now, in the past, I think there was always a pick me strategy in the environment of every generation would look to the one below them and look for the leaders and the people that were exceptional to bring them above and kind of use them as, shepherds, for lack of a better term, to bring the cultural norms that they think is important or that they're really passionate about to that younger generation. If you want to get something done in a group of people, you don't go to the average Joe. You go and talk to the exceptional guys, the guys that are managing directors before they ever should have been, the guys that are, starting their own companies, the guys that are, internationally known or have a lot of prestige. These people are the people that are going to be able to impact and influence within their generation. And when we look at the past, we've seen that it was always about a transfer. It's about bringing those people in, creating cultural norms, and then transferring power, money, and wealth kind of a little bit down. Never a one-to-one return, never the most efficient process, but it did work with enough returns for society to get what it needed done. Now, with what I see today, I think there's a lot more annihilation between generations. I think there's a lot less common ground in terms of baseline agreement on societal norms as what is expected and accepted. I think there's a big gap in terms of the experience that young people are going through versus the image that's given by both just the culture as a whole and by the older people that we interact with. And I think all of this accumulates into a pretty interesting situation because I think our generation is in between a rock and a hard place where we see the flaws of the prior generation. We see a lot of the personality flaws that were normalized in society and that psychology has evolved into to kind of push us away from accepting that. Whether we talk about narcissistic tendencies, whether we talk about antisocial tendencies, whether we talk about oversharing, whether you talk about trauma dumping, all these things that if you talk to people years ago, even if you talk about sexuality and gender, you bring that up 30, 40 years ago, it's not even in their conversations really. It's not even close to as major of a conversation as it is now. And what we see with our new generations when we have that is that there's a lot more nuance, there's a lot more separation, and there's a lot more different pockets of echo chambers within our generations versus generations past who are a lot more intellectually and ideologically united. So now what do we have? We have a situation where people are ideologically, intellectually separated. We have technology that allows you to take that separation and amplify it and maintain it at a crazy rate where people can spend 8 hours a day just building their point of view in their echo chambers. And we have companies that are profiting billion on it that are also taking that money and reinvesting it into the government and into global politics to prevent there being a hard stop from this to continue. How does this manifest in my generation, in my opinion? I think we're going to see a big split. I think over the next 10 to 20 years, we're going to see a lower class of internet users, people that can't afford typical experiences that characterize the American experience. When you talk about vacations, eating out, buying expensive things, big plazas, owning property, I think there's going to be a big portion, maybe even the majority of America, they're never going to experience those things. Everything they're going to have is rented. Everything they're going to have is loaned. And they will essentially always be poor. And the biggest way of having entertainment or community or anything or any type of ownership or doing anything is by doing it on the internet, right? And then while there's going to be kind of that underclass of people living paycheck to paycheck, living kind of internet-based lives, I think there's going to be on the other end of the scale, this aristocracy. And there's going to be this aristocracy of people that maybe look at technology almost as if they know something better, that they know something better behind it. Maybe they work as producers on the code. Maybe they've built lifestyles that aren't including of so much technology. Maybe they have control over content centers, or they have control or heavy stakes in a lot of software which is heavily used on phones, and they're generating capital that just disconnects them from the rest of the generation. I don't know the reason or how it plays out, but I think there's going to be a large scale, not large scale, but there's going to be a big aristocracy of people who essentially kind of like tech leaders and tech controllers who kind of have a very big say over the media that's getting pushed, where it's getting pushed, what technologies we're pushing, what technologies we're developing, where the tax money goes to develop technology. And there's going to be this underclass of technology to them that's just going to be as a number that's on a paper, that's incoming revenue. How can we use this force, and that they're going to see as a disposable action and force, and how can we use that to our advantage, and how can we use that to what we do? So, yeah, I think that's the future. I think that we need to mitigate ourselves from continuing to go. At the end of the day, when we look at trends like that, I think the most efficient and the most effective ways is to put money in people's pockets and to improve the culture. But when you have such a big split in people that really profit from pushing that culture because they are able to keep their happiness and their long-term goals independent of that, where you have other people who's economically they may be tied to the culture, psychologically or socioeconomically they might be tied to the culture, even work-wise they might be tied to the culture. Those people are definitely going to experience a lot more struggle and a lot more of an inability to really perform. So I think it's really important as we move through this year and as our generation moves to the next 5, 10, 15 years, that we really are moving intentionally with an understanding that we are moving into times that no one's seen before, that carry high risk of turbulence, of instability. And it is on our shoulders and our responsibilities to understand what actions we need to take and what things of the past cultures we need to keep and move on, so that we can still interact with these older cultures and maintain the intergenerational transfer of power, wealth, and knowledge, while still understanding that we need to build new frameworks and we need to deny the assumptions of the past and redefine what it means to be in a community, what it means to be part of the nation, and what it means to kind of build an economy, and what it means and what income is based on, and what is the functional, motivation we use for that. So I think that's enough for this essay. We will continue the series. I'm really excited about this. We're going to have Dylan on for the next one. So, watch out for that. I hope everyone's doing well, and stay safe.